Okay. Okay, Chris, over to you.
Hi, welcome everybody. I'm Chris Thomas. I'm a volunteer with the Climate Action Now app and several other organizations in the climate space. And I worked on this particular action party tonight, so they asked me to say a few words. What we're going to do is we'll wait a couple of minutes for folks to join, actually get their videos started and join us here. And anybody who has joined us this far, you can get out your cell phones and fire up the Climate Action Now app, because what we're going to be doing is we're joining each other in this Zoom, but actually it's to take actions on that Climate Action Now app. So if you haven't been to an action party before, you want to go ahead and do that. And just to let everybody know, the group of actions that we're taking tonight are to encourage our legislators here in California to give us some new laws in 2024 to take meaningful action addressing climate change. 2023 was a good year, but we need to build on that. As we all know, we have only 6 years left before 2030, and we have to make significant reductions. California, the greenhouse gas reduction pace has slowed to a crawl. And of course, across the world, we're still increasing our greenhouse gas emissions. So we need this legislation to help us move forward and to pick up the pace. Right now, I'm going to introduce Matthew at Climate Action Now. He's the director of content there, in order to share with us the way to find the actions in the app once you have it open, and to show us the counter as we're going to try to reach a certain goal with the number of actions we take tonight. All right,
great.
Matthew.
Hello, everybody. My name's Matthew. And just a moment here, I'm going to put up what we call the goal tracker. So here it is. Hopefully everybody can see this on your screen. And this is how you're going to get to the actions that we're going to be taking tonight that Chris and Bill Murphy, who I'm not sure he's here, but many thanks to Chris and Bill for making 50 plus actions for tonight's party. Really going to keep us all busy and make sure we can have a really big impact. So in order to have that impact and get to those actions, you're going to want to take out your phone, hold it right up to the screen here, and open your camera app like you're about to take a picture, and point it right at that little QR code, a little weird looking box, and it should pop up with a link. And if you tap on that link, it'll take you to the App Store to download the app, or right into our campaign for tonight if you already have the app. So should be pretty simple and seamless. If it's not, if you have any trouble getting to any of the actions tonight, please just drop me a line in the chat. I'm happy to help you. We do have, some workarounds if the QR code isn't working for you. But hopefully the QR code should the actions have a little picture of the blue marble, and it's filling
Matthew, your voice is breaking up
in real time. The numbers are going up. Yeah. So sorry, I just saw that my internet is unstable. Hopefully you can hear me again now. Anyway, on the left-hand side, we have the blue marble. It's filling up with the actions that you guys are taking in real time. Every time somebody here tonight takes an action, that counter will go up. So let's just keep the counter moving. Try to get all the way to 1,000 actions. I think that's going to be an ambitious goal, but I think we can do it. So let's get to it, and back to you, Chris.
All right. Well, a couple quick things. As Matthew mentioned, there are lots of actions ready to go. They start out with some general actions, some key things that we think generally we need to go forward with this year of high impact legislation in 2024. And then they move on to some more specific ones, but they're all primarily problem statements. This is asking for the legislators to take action and bring legislation forth to address these problem statements. And we have things there for reducing the greenhouse gas emissions, as well as natural carbon sequestration and some adaptation efforts. All of those are in the app. You don't have to get through them all tonight. They'll be available for you tomorrow. And if there's something missing, you'll notice that these actions have an email from me in them. And if there's something missing that you would like to see an action on, send me an email on it and I'll get an action into the app to address it. Okay, and the other thing I wanted to mention tonight is as we're talking, we're going to have you submit questions for our guests in the chat, and we'll try to get to all of those questions. If for some reason we are not able to get to all of them, we will follow up with the answers in an email after the action party. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dalia Masacci. It's a great pleasure. I'm so glad you're here, Dalia. She's the executive producer and editor of Everyday Climate Champions podcast. And if you haven't listened to that, you really need to. It's a great podcast. She's also a writer, an editor, a journalist, a trainer, a community organizer, and has been trained as a climate leader with the Climate Reality Project, and I'm sure much more. I'm going to turn it over to you. I'm so glad you're here. She's going to moderate tonight's party. Dalia?
Thank you very much, Chris. I'm excited to be here today. And as you said, I've been involved with the Climate Reality Project Bay Area chapter for a while, about 2 years. And also, as you said, I lead a great team of Bay Area community members in producing the monthly podcast called Everyday Climate Champions. It's only 15 minutes long, which I always tell people because sometimes when we think podcasts, we think, oh no, it's a long commitment. But no, this is something you can do during chore time, during dog walking time, whatever it is. We speak with everyday people in the Bay Area who are concerned about our climate crisis, and they're all doing something about it, just like we're going to be doing tonight. You can find the Everyday Climate Champions podcast on your favorite podcast platform or on YouTube. And Chris is a regular listener, and I'm excited to hear from him. He invited me to moderate today's session, and I'm so pleased to be part of this action party because it's yet another way to get involved in climate action on a regular basis. And I personally love the Climate Action Now app because it allows me to get active legislatively on a very regular basis, sometimes every day. So I love it, and you'll soon love it also, I think, after tonight. So let me introduce our two guests tonight. The first one is Zach Pierce. He is Senior Manager of State and Local Policy of Rewiring America, a great organization. Zach has spent over 10 years working as a public servant and an advocate on climate change and clean energy policy across the country. He is currently a senior manager at Rewiring America, where he leads state and local policy efforts across the Western US. He most recently served as North Carolina Governor Roy Cooper's senior advisor for climate change policy. And Zach previously held senior climate policy positions for Governor Jared Polis and Governor John Hickenlooper in Colorado. He was also a senior campaign representative for the Sierra Club in the Beyond Coal campaign, which focused on clean energy regulatory and legislative advocacy in Colorado and New Mexico. And in his free time, I'm not sure when that is, but in his free time, Zach is a rock climber and a musician. Welcome, Zach. And our other panelist tonight is Mark Victoria. He is a senior statewide organizer with the Climate Center. Mark helped lead the Orange County Community Table to a sweep of congressional victories in 2018. And he was a lobbyist for AFSCME Local 2620, focusing on worker protection, increasing access to mental health programs, and reducing the recidivism rate for parolees. He also served as the Southern California political director for the California Labor Federation, where he worked to further the rights of all workers in California, union or not. Although new to working in the environmental movement, Mark has always lived a life that is tied to nature and conservation. Mark enjoys alpine climbing, organic gardening, wildlife photography, and documentary filmmaking. So I'm very pleased to have a panel of heavy hitters tonight. Zach, let's start with you, and I'm going to ask you to share a bit about what you're working on at the moment.
Thanks, Dahlia. Let me start by making sure folks can hear me okay.
Yep,
Okay,
it's fine.
thumbs up and head nods, great. Well, it's great to be here. I want to thank Climate Action Now for hosting this evening's event, fellow presenters and facilitators, but mostly and most importantly, thank everyone who's taken time out of your precious evening to hop on a Zoom call and talk about how we can support strong climate legislation in California. I'm really grateful for that and grateful for the opportunity to participate tonight. Dahlia already mentioned my role and some of my background. I work for Rewiring America. We're a national electrification nonprofit focused on electrifying our homes, our businesses, and our communities. And we're doing this with direct-to-consumer educational tools and public awareness campaigns. We're engaging on policy and advocacy efforts across the country. We're piloting community electrification projects and helping to maximize the impact of the Federal Inflation Reduction Act. And all of this work is in service of what we consider to be our North Star, which is to ensure that efficient electric machines are the most convenient and accessible to install and operate across the country. You may ask yourself, why are we so focused on installing electric machines? And I want to share a little bit more about that. 42% of the energy-related greenhouse gas emissions in this country come from what we talk about as kitchen table issues. They come from how everyday people decide to get to work, which cars they drive, how they heat their homes and water, how they cook their food, dry their clothes, and where their electricity comes from. And all of this daily activity translates into about 1 billion machines across the US, across 121 million households. And many of those machines still rely on burning fossil fuels to operate. But by electrifying these machines, through superior technologies, which we'll talk more about tonight, heat pumps, electric vehicles, we really have a big opportunity to improve folks' lives while also reducing emissions. It really is a win-win. And while these efficient electric technologies represent an exciting upgrade for folks that can save money for many people, they can reduce pollution and increase the comfort and safety of households across the country, they're still not the de facto option for people. Our incumbent energy system, fossil fuels are still the default in a lot of ways. We're stuck in kind of a fossil fuel feedback loop where maybe as a consumer, you're not sure what the latest and greatest technologies are. And when that gas furnace in your basement dies, the default is to maybe replace it with another gas furnace. Installers may not be incentivized to install new technology. And without scale, the upfront cost of many of these electric machines remains high, even if as a consumer, you will save money over the long term because they're so much more efficient than the machines that they're replacing. So that's where tonight's conversation comes in. That's where legislation comes in, and why it's so important that we're here this evening to talk about reaching out to our elected officials here in California. In many ways, policy and legislation really set the rules of the game for these markets, and ambitious legislation is critical to growing the markets for these newer, cleaner technologies and unlocking many of the benefits that can come from them. At the federal level, folks may be aware of the Inflation Reduction Act, which was passed last year, which is the largest climate investment certainly ever to be authorized federally in the United States. And it unleashed a generational opportunity to invest in clean energy technologies, including a number of tax credits and rebates for electric appliances and home improvements. And because of the IRA, every household across the country now has what we like to talk about as an electric bank account, whether that's through rebates or tax credits, where you can take advantage of these technologies that really represent just the march of progress and improvement in the machines that we use to power our everyday lives. We have a a calculator out right now that helps you understand which federal tax credits and rebates you might be eligible for, and I'll drop a link to that calculator in the chat. But while we've got all this exciting momentum, we have better machines that are increasingly more affordable. There's still a lot more work to do. And as Chris already mentioned, California had a really exciting legislative session this year, but we can't rest on our laurels. We have to continue the work and lay the groundwork for next year's legislative session in California so that we can transform the market and grow a clean energy economy that works for everyone. So I'm super excited to jump in tonight and talk more about some specific topics and pieces of legislation that we're interested in with Rewiring America. But I'll end it on that. Thanks again, and looking forward to the discussion.
Great, thank you, Zach. And the IRA calculator by Rewiring America is awesome. I endorse that highly, and I hope that people will check out the link that you drop in the chat on that. I have already a question for you, but I'll ask it in a moment. Right now, I want to go over to Mark and hear a little bit from you. You able to get on, Mark? Okay.
Sorry, my screen was too big, so I couldn't find the unmute button. My apologies.
Okay.
Good evening, everybody. Again, thank you all so much for joining us tonight. It really is something that the movement does not exist without folks like you. And I say that as not only just an organizer here at the Climate Center, but I've been an organizer since 2000. So it's, I'm approaching 24 years now of doing this kind of work. And the only time that I've ever really seen true change is when we do come together. And we go back to that Margaret Mead quote, which is, never doubt that a small group of committed citizens can, oh wait, I messed this up. Never doubt. Somebody else wants to jump in and help me out and save me here, that'd be great. It's funny because I use this quote all the time and I forgot. Never doubt that a committed group of citizens can change the world, when in fact it is the only thing that ever has. And I will say, there we go. Yay, finally. I will say that, through my years of working with labor, right, the labor movement is nothing but its members. And many times people think that it's, it's about the political director, it's about the legislative director, it's about this. It is about the members. And that's what gives California unions a tremendous amount of power. It is members that have gotten together to say that we're done dealing with, employers that are not fair, and we're done with employers that do not respect us. And so we need to bring this over into the climate movement. And we have been, and there's been a tremendous amount of progress here in California. And it has, really taken us and put us as a leader across the world, because as so goes the world, so goes California, so goes the world. And so it's one of the things that I'm very happy to be able to bring my experience over here through my organizing and my political work and legislative work to the Climate Center, so that we can go ahead and, pursue like true climate policies that will bring California in alignment with where we need to be if we want to save not only the planet for ourselves, but for future generations. So with that, I'm going to do just a very quick little presentation, if that's okay. It's just about 10 slides. So I'm just going to do a quick screen share. And this is our Climate Safe California presentation. And so our Climate Safe California presentation is really how we base a lot of the work that we're doing. We're trying to make a California that is climate safe for everybody. And again, when I came here, I was very happy to see that it's really about, not just about what the Climate Center can do, but it's about what we can all do together. So our mission is we're working to rapidly reduce climate pollution at scale, starting in California. Our main goal is try to get California at net negative emissions by 2035. And there are so many folks out there in the Capitol, they're like, what are you, crazy? There's no way that we can do that by 2035. And the truth is that if there's the political will, there is the ability to do that. And so we just need to make sure that our legislators up in Sacramento understand that. California, as I said before, must lead. We've got the tools, we got the know-how on how to lead on climate. And when our elected officials accelerate the transition to clean energy, all of us will benefit. And so our impact, the three major pieces that we really work on is one, nature-based carbon sequestration. And that is, not the brand new kind of carbon capture and storage that is costing billions of dollars to make these scrubbers that are literally just going to take out carbon, but still allow for other pollutants to go into the air and poison the neighborhoods that they're in. But nature-based carbon sequestration, this has been around since the beginning of, microbes having entered our soil. And this is what we're depending on. And this is the only true way that we're going to be able to draw down the carbon that we've been releasing over the last 400 years. Now, nature has a cycle. It releases carbon through fires. It releases carbon through the natural process. Animals all exhale carbon, but there's also the other process where we absorb carbon. And it is absorbed into the soil, by trees, by grass, by exudates in the soil. And that is really where we've been really trying to focus on our nature-based carbon sequestration, which is to say that we want to be able to improve the soil conditions on California's working lands, which is not only the agricultural lands that are in throughout the Central Valley and Imperial Valley of the state, but also many of the forest lands. And we want to be able to increase the amount of carbon matter that goes back into the soil. And some of this is very simple, which is to say that it's really, if you're a gardener and you understand how to do mulch and you understand how to do compost, those are really the basics of it. Because the more that we're able to build our soil with non-petrochemicals, the healthier the soil becomes. And the healthier it becomes, the less need of those type of petrochemical fertilizers that we'll have. Because if the microbes are alive, they're able to remove, there's that natural symbiosis between the plants, be it the tree or grass or a bush, whatever it is, there's that natural symbiosis where the tree says, oh, hey, I need some copper, I need some whatever, water, whatever it is. And they send a message to the bacteria and they send a message to the fungus that's in the soil. And that fungus goes back and gets that. And in exchange, basically what happens is the plant is giving those microbes in the soil like some type of baked goods, right? It is a carbon-based fuel for those microbes that are in the soil. That exchange is what helps to store carbon into the ground. And the more we move away from traditional agriculture, the worse our carbon gets. You can look at some across the northern hemisphere during the time when we are all planting, be it, us, Russia, China, whoever it is across the entire world, as we're going up to dig up the soil so that we can go ahead and plant, that digging releases a massive amount of carbon. And you can see as the growing season begins, the amount of carbon that's released into the air. And they're really seeing that that's really based on the amount of the type of farming that's happened. So we want to move to no-till farming. We want to make sure that our soils are healthy. And the other thing is that one of the things that's great about us improving our soils is that the amount of carbon material that we can put on top of our soil really acts as another reservoir. So instead of building a dam in another canyon of California, that carbon material, instead of allowing that water to run off, it will go back into the soil and refill our deep water aquifers, which is something that we really, really need. Moving on, we do have our clean energy microgrids, and this is, trying to do our distributed energy resources. This last year, we were the co-sponsor with Union of Concerned Scientists on Senate Bill 233 from Senator Skinner. And that bill was a bidirectional charging bill, which is if you already have an electric vehicle and you plug your battery in at night, it allows you to not only charge your car, but if you want to, you can go ahead and send electricity back to the grid in the evening when the sun's not there. And it can help avoid turning on those peaker plants, which are the plants that we have to turn on to carry us through either high demand loads or in the evening when obviously solar is not producing. So that was our bill. We turned it into a 2-year bill. We almost got it out of the second house, but we're slowly, we'll be working on that bill for next year. So that's our microgrid, and then our third major piece is our phasing out of polluting fuels. That's working on the transportation industry, working on decarbonizing buildings, and all those other things. So I'm going to go ahead and move forward because I don't know how much time I really have. So
real quick, Mark, I'm so sorry, but I just
Just-
wanted to put the QR code up one more
Yeah.
time, just to make sure everybody had a chance to get back. So I know we got some people coming a little bit later. So steal your screen for just a second. I'll give it right
you want me to
back.
unstop? I need to stop sharing for you to do that, I think.
Yeah.
Okay, so here's that QR code again. For anybody who missed that, all you have to do is take out your phone, hold it right up to this little to the screen, and take out your camera app like you're going to take a picture. But instead of taking a picture, instead of clicking the picture button, just point it right at that box and go ahead and click on the link that appears. And it'll take you right to the app and right to the actions that we have prepared for tonight. We're already very close to our goal, but we do want to make sure that everybody has a chance to take these actions. Chris worked really hard on them. They're really important. They're really cool. Got to bombard our state legislators for 2024. So yeah, and again, if you have any trouble accessing the QR code, accessing the app, just let me know in the chat and I will help you get situated. Thank you so much. Back to you, Mark.
No worries. I feel like we're on a news cycle here. All right. So just really quickly, we do have our Climate Safe California campaign. We've gotten over 2,100 endorsements from individuals, local leaders, cities and counties, and a number of other folks as well. We're actively engaged in, several powerful statewide coalitions and growing those coalitions that we're engaging with on a regular basis, and also building power together with our Climate Safe California core partners. I think everybody knows the big challenges that we're under. These are these climate tipping points that once we get there, we're afraid of what that cascading outcome is going to be. And so I'm not going to go through these. I'm pretty sure if you're here, you are already aware of what is happening in the rainforest, how bad the ice up at the Arctic is melting, and all these other things. So I'll just run through this next one here, which is just, if you're in California, you're well aware of what this weather whiplash has looked like, right? And we go from burning to flooding to burning to flooding, and it just keeps getting worse. And this last year, Northern California was just inundated with floods all over the place. This is just following a massive drought that we hadn't seen in 1,200 years. So this is something that we are going to need to prepare ourselves for. And the state also needs to prepare itself because, because of this weather whiplash, insurance companies are pulling out of the state. The state has to step in as insurer of last resort. They're spending significantly more money on, battling these fires every single season, and also on so many other things, heat-related illnesses, the flooding, and many other things. Here's one of the pieces that, this is the oil and gas influence in the capital. And we're talking about just in California is staggering. In 2021 to 2022, the legislative session, there were $30 million spent on lobbying efforts. Now, those lobbying efforts are literally just what they're paying their lobbyists and not what they're paying in campaign contributions to folks. That is a completely separate piece. So we're talking about just $30 million spent by the oil and gas interests in California in 21-22 legislative session. Fossil fuel companies spent $77.5 million to lobby lawmakers between 2018 and 2022. So you can see they're realizing that there's a writing on the wall and they're spending more and more money on lobbying our legislators, which is why it's critical that our legislators are hearing from their constituents. And the other piece is that oil and gas lobbyists are pushing for carbon capture and storage and fighting public health and safety setbacks on neighborhood drilling. We did see that, last year there was, I can't remember the bill, But there was the setbacks bill, which they wanted to say that no oil derricks could exist within 3,500 feet of schools and churches and other buildings like that. Immediately there was an injunction, and now there's going to be a ballot measure on this. They're spending huge money to fight the things that we know need to happen. So again, our Climate Safe California campaign, unique, comprehensive campaign, hopefully making California the first state in the nation to become carbon negative. We are really focused on phasing out fossil fuels, scaling up natural carbon removal, investing in resilient communities for all, and then funding climate action today and not paying more for things later on. And then our guiding principles are following the latest science, securing a just transition for fossil fuel workers and their families, and then also prioritizing climate justice with equitable solutions. These are just some of the bills that the state has led that has caused other states and or countries to follow. And then if you guys want, I'm going to go ahead and drop into the chat when I'm done our Climate Safe California link so that you guys, if you'd love to, please sign up and become more engaged with the Climate Center as well. And with that, I will stop the share and I'll drop a link in just a minute.
Okay, great. Thank you, Mark. So many priorities and so much you're working on. It can be a little intimidating or a little overwhelming, but if people can get involved in one thing at a time, that can help. Just one thing that kind of strikes your fancy, or if you're a gardener, you might want to go with the nature-based climate solutions, that kind of carbon sequestration. If you're interested in if you feel really affected by the weather whiplash, as you were talking about, that might be something you want to start with, etc. Thank you. And I was struck by the large numbers you gave of the money that's being spent to counteract this kind of work. The good thing is that we have the power of the vote. We're the voters. So we can use an app like Climate Action Now to actually bring our voices to the floor. I wanted to go back to you, Zach, because I saw there was a question in the chat that was, I think, directed to you. The question is, propane users are not, they wanted to know if they're eligible for tax incentives, loan subsidies, or other tax incentives in the Inflation Reduction Act.
Yeah, it's a great question. Thanks, Dahlia. And I'm sorry, I must have missed it in the chat, but the answer is yes. Propane users are eligible. The tax credits and the rebates. The good news is there are a lot of different programs across the federal government and the state of California. The bad news is it's kind of confusing to understand all the different programs that you're eligible for. And they're all great resources out there. I can drop another link in the chat called the Switches On, which helps folks understand, specifically in California, which rebates and incentives that you may be eligible for. But the general answer is yes. And most of the rebates and incentives are attached to the new clean electric machine that you buy, as opposed to what currently is in the house or in your basement heating your home. And one of the additional points I would make about propane is that propane is what we would characterize as a delivered fuel. So basically fossil fuels that you're using to heat your home that aren't methane gas. And generally speaking, those fuels like propane are very expensive compared to an efficient heat pump that can both heat and cool your home. And so when we think about the biggest impact that can be made from these relatively finite amount of rebate dollars, we think about delivered fuel as including propane as one of the biggest opportunities to improve people's public health and safety in their home, but also to lower their monthly utility bill. And so not just a yes, but definitely look into those tax credits if you're on propane, because it's a big opportunity to not just do your part on climate, but also see some really important daily benefits just for your wallet and for your general comfort and quality of life.
Great points. I think, Matthew, you might want to I think you had something to say, Matthew, right?
I certainly do. Thank you. We have reached our goal. We are over 1,000 and barely halfway through the hour. So well done, everyone. That's great. I'm going to bump it up to 1,200. See if we can make it to our little stretch goal tonight. So keep up the good work, and back to you guys.
Okay, awesome. Well, since I have you right here, Zach, I was wondering, could you tell us a little bit about your priorities at Rewiring America for this year, this legislative year?
Yes, I would be happy to. And I do want to say I'm focused, and Rewiring America is focused on one piece of the pie, so to speak, when it comes to our overall emissions picture, and we have to do all of the things. But I'd like to highlight a few of the topics that we're really interested in. As Chris mentioned at the beginning of the call, we've had a really California is a global leader in climate policy, and but that doesn't mean there's not more work to do. We had a great year in 2023, but there were a number of bills this year that didn't quite make it to the governor's desk that will be coming back presumably next year. And so just want to call attention to a few of those that are kind of in our world. One of the actions in the app speaks to better coordination of state climate change efforts. And that may sound like a boring and bureaucratic policy area. No offense, Chris, but I will say it's super, super important. When we talk about removing greenhouse gas emissions from our energy system, from our way of life, or even being net negative in greenhouse gas emissions, we're talking about changing virtually every aspect of our everyday lives. And that's the same holds true for state government. We need agencies that were traditionally focused on this one thing in this lane to be working with other agencies in a comprehensive and holistic manner. One example of that was a bill that was introduced last year, Assembly Bill 593, which was sponsored by Assembly Member Haney, which would have directed our California Energy Commission to identify and implement an emissions reduction strategy for the building sector, complete with milestones to make sure that we're actually on track, and the building sector specifically is on track to achieve the state's carbon neutrality goals by 2045. Commercial and residential buildings in California account for about a quarter of the state's overall greenhouse gas emissions. And while we've seen really significant progress in some sectors like transportation and electricity on the path to carbon neutrality, the building sector is one of those sectors that's really emerging as an area where we're not seeing the emissions reductions that we need, and we really need to pick up our pace of progress. And so this bill would have required more all of government planning and strategizing to make sure that we are following through on our lofty goals with action today to make sure that we're staying on track. One additional bill last year was Senate Bill 394, sponsored by Senator Gonzalez, that we worked really hard on, which made it all the way to the governor's desk, and he unfortunately didn't sign the legislation. It wasn't based on the policy, it was based on the fact that there were budgeting concerns. But basically, this would have required our California Energy Commission to engage with other stakeholders in the education space to create a statewide master plan for healthy, sustainable, and climate resilient schools. We think about I think it was characterized as the whiplash between floods and fires in California and the impact it has on all of us, but particularly for kids that are going to school, and thinking about the importance of having safe, resilient, comfortable buildings that are aligned with our climate future, and in many cases serving as community centers and microgrids when we have extreme weather. This is a really important thing to focus on. And so we're excited to bring that legislation back next year to maximize our investment in public schools, which is an investment in our next generation and also in the resiliency of our communities. So that's another example of our energy folks need to talk to our education folks, and they need to talk to our facilities folks, and we all have to work together to get this done. Let me see, I've got a couple notes here. I'm gonna try to be concise, so I'll just pick a few. Okay, one other campaign that I want to highlight in the app, there is an action related to regulation reform for clean energy deployment in our buildings. This is back to one of those points of legislation and regulation really are going to set the rules of the game and decide how quickly these markets evolve. As I already mentioned, commercial and residential buildings account for about a quarter of our state's greenhouse gas emissions. And one regulatory process that is underway that we are very involved in is the update of the state's building code. The 2025 building code is a really big opportunity to move California's buildings away from polluting gas heating equipment to efficient and electric alternatives. And so this isn't a piece of legislation, but it's certainly something that we need to keep pushing our legislators to emphasize, which is strong regulatory action, including strong updates to the building code that, among other things, require and encourage folks to replace air conditioning units with these things called heat pumps, which will both cool and heat your home. We have seen estimates that over the next, currently there are almost 2 million residential AC units that are due for replacement in California. And the building code can help ensure that when those machines are at the end of their useful life and they're being replaced, that we replace them with the superior, more efficient machine that can both heat and cool the home, especially in a state that's warming and is going to see more air conditioning needs. So the building code is another really important one. So I could go on for well past when you'd like me to in your evening on a Monday night, but those are a few examples.
Great, thank you. And it strikes me that some of the stuff sounds really boring, and when you scratch the surface, kind of superficially, building codes, that doesn't sound very exciting. But if you dig a little deeper, then you start understanding, oh, this is really what we need. This is interesting. And, so that becomes something that you want to work on. And speaking of that, as a Climate Action Now app user, I've noticed that so many of the actions have background information right there in the app to educate me. So I might not know about the topic, and then I read through what the CAN app has to say about it, and then I understand, oh, now I see why this is such an important issue. And Chris, I know that you work a lot on the back end of the CAN app, and I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about what all goes into getting an action up on the app in terms of the background information, the research you do, etc.
Sure, I can say a few things about that. What I do to start with is to look and see if somebody's already tackled the topic, and that's something you can do using the search function in the app. And if they haven't, then I start by pulling up a small database data entry section of the app and put in the title that you see and the action, the ask that we're making by way of an email, and then I generally copy that over to a call, so that means people could either send it as an email or a call. And in doing that, I've done a little bit of research to see what I can find out about the topic. Maybe there's a reference or two that I can put in if you look in the why section of a particular action. So if you see at the bottom when you're looking at the app, the action in the app, you might see the opportunity to do it now, or you can look and see there's a why, and there's a little bit of an information place within the why for some additional references. Now, this action party came up very quickly. We were trying to catch the window for the legislators as they're working to think about next year's bills, and before Halloween and the rest of the holidays hit them. So we cruised through to put these up there as topics. They will probably be visited again as actions that you can take to remind those legislators. And by then, there will be some more reference materials that we're able to attach to the why portion of each action. And that's kind of what it looks like in the behind the scenes. It takes maybe an hour to write one, less if you're building off of something that somebody else has done or the research is available there. So it gives you kind of a background on it, and happy to say more. I think Brett is there
Great.
to say something.
Yeah, thank you, Chris. Did you want to add something, Brett?
I do. And just for folks who don't know me, I'm the CEO of Climate Action Now. I wanted to emphasize a few things pertinent to what our panel has said. With respect to what Chris just said, we have one paid staffer. That's this young gentleman, Matthew, who you've met tonight. The actions are created mostly by a wonderful team of volunteers like Chris, Bill Murphy. We could not do what we're doing without the incredible brain power and energy of these folks. I know a lot of us on the call are retired and wanting to do things about the crisis. One wonderful thing that you can do is join our team of volunteers. And the way to do that is to send an email to Matthew and just tell him you'd like to find out more about it. Don't make a commitment, just say you're curious and would like to know more about it, and he can give you more information. It literally takes a half hour of training to learn how to fill out the form that ultimately becomes an action, inside the Climate Action Now app. So to Matthew, well, he just put his email address in the chat. So please reach out to Matthew and help us do that. And I just want to applaud all of I think we have several of our volunteers on the call tonight. They just do a fantastic job writing well-researched, well-sourced, and well-written messages to political and business leaders. And then that takes me kind of to the next point I want to make. I just want to reinforce what Mark Victoria said earlier, and Zach has touched on, and Dahlia. These messages that you folks send through the app to legislators are incredibly important. And I want to underline that, because the main question I get asked by app users is, do my messages make a difference? I mean, it's scary. I mean, it's a big world, right? How can what I'm doing possibly make a difference? I have become convinced after 2.5 years of doing this and seeing instance after instance after instance where these messages did make a difference, that they do make a difference. And here is why. Public opinion is the only counterweight to the immense power of the fossil fuel industry. Mark showed how much money they're spending just in California, just a small sliver of the amount of money they're spending in California to undo the will of the people, the benefit of the people. And so you may say, well, my messages alone won't make any difference. That's true. But when you send a message in the app, you are adding your voice to a chorus of voices, other people that are also sending messages in the app. It's a chorus. And the more people joining the chorus, the louder the sound we make, and the more irresistible that sound becomes to elected officials and business leaders. A lot of those folks are really good people. They want to do the right thing, but they need support. They need our back. And we give them that when we tell them, we're just not standing up. We're not going to stand for this fossil fuel nonsense anymore. We want you guys to do the right thing. It's guaranteed, folks. If enough people are demanding climate action from our leaders, it will happen. This is an absolute guarantee. The only reason we will fail is we aren't being loud enough, and enough of us are not speaking up. And so that's why Climate Action Now created this app. That's the only purpose this app was created for, is to make it really, really, really easy for you all to just amplify your opinion. Say, go in there, you got to make a habit out of this. Go in there every day. The average person says 10 messages a day. We have users do 50 messages a day. Rick Moody's in there doing 100 messages a day, and he's been doing it for months. So anyway, I just wanted to jump in, thank you our panel of people who are just, so dedicated to trying to get this critical legislation passed, but then especially to all of you for taking time here on, a Tuesday evening and coming in because you care. You care about our country, you care about this planet, and you care about future generations. This is such vital work. Thank you, everybody, for being part of this.
An almost Tuesday evening, but I second everything else.
Yeah, I agree. And I just wanted to point out the exchange in the chat between Matthew and David. David asked about if he has a topic that he wants to see featured in the CAN app, how does he do it? And Matthew said, please email me. You can enter it yourself, actually, and he'll show us how. So just wanted to underline that. And we just have a few more minutes left here. I'll go back to Mark and see if you have any final comments you'd like to share with our group here tonight.
I think, there was a question in the chat about, do legislators get annoyed by the number of emails they get? And I'll be honest, as a former legislative staffer, yes, absolutely. We hate them, but we track them no matter what, right? Like, it is something that we have to do as state employees. And so for the staff, it is a difficult thing to do, right? Because you've got your responsibilities, but it is the only way that we have to effectually change legislation and effectually change the perception of what is happening. If a legislator's office does not hear from their constituents because constituents are just not worried about it, we're busy watching, I don't know, the Kardashians or whatever we do that keeps us from engaging with our local electeds, if they don't hear from us, they're hearing from somebody else. And there was something that I always used to say when I was talking to my members, either at AFSCME or just, with the state fed, which was, if you're not, and this is not mine, this is something that has been said multiple times, but if you're not at the table for dinner, you are the dinner. And this is one of those ways that we can, as individuals, be at the table and sway the decisions that legislators make. And during this last legislative cycle, we were working on our bill. We had countless phone calls going into one of the assembly offices, and we knew this bill was going to get shot down. There was so many constituents that called in on this bill that they ended up just going ahead and kicking it out of committee just to kind of get it out of their hair. So be aware that the work you're doing here is critical. And yeah, some staffers are going to be annoyed, but just keep doing it, because if you don't, all they're hearing is from oil and gas industry.
Excellent point. Thank you very much, Mark. And I'll go to Zach and see if you have any final thoughts you'd like to share.
Yeah, thanks, Dahlia. And just thanks again to the whole group here tonight. This is super inspiring and important, and this is how we're going to keep driving the change that we know needs to happen in California and across the country. Maybe in closing, I'll just speak quickly to the fact that there's a real cognitive dissonance when working on climate change, where you can have two truths that are equally true, where we've seen amazing progress. We've seen the Federal Inflation Reduction Act, which is a generational investment. We've seen this Californias of the world really demonstrate that you can drive this transition in a way that is cost effective, efficient, equitable, and works for everyone. And at the same time, we have a front row seat every day to the quickly accelerating climate crisis, especially those communities that have been historically underserved and marginalized. And we have a lot of work to do. We have to entirely rebuild our energy system at the same time that infrastructure is being subjected to a climate that will continue to become unfamiliar to what we've known when it was established in the first place. But the good news is, in my opinion, that when we talk about the solutions, we're not asking people to make a sacrifice because we have to do it to confront the climate crisis. We are talking about machines and options that represent an upgrade, not a sacrifice. Machines and new options that are going to save people money, they're going to improve people's lives, and they're going to create a new wave of economic growth and vitality across this country. And so I think we need to focus on that broader message that and I don't mean to be oversimplify or, have glasses that are too rose tinted, but there are a lot of situations where we can really drive progress that we want to see across this state in a manner that addresses the climate crisis while also improving folks' lives today. And we talk a lot about voting power and the importance of reaching out to your legislators, and that's absolutely true. But I'll just kind of sum up by returning to the point that I made at the top, which is that the everyday choices that you make as a consumer are also a big deal. 42% of our country's greenhouse gases from our energy system come from those decisions that you make on a daily basis. And it doesn't mean that you have to go down to the basement tonight and throw out the gas furnace and before the end of its useful life, but it does mean to start thinking about how old is that furnace or how old is that vehicle and what does that next replacement need to look like, because we have to replace 1 billion machines over the next 30 years with electric appliances, and we can do it as those machines naturally phase out, but we have to start today, and that starts with educating yourself, talking to your neighbors, talking to your family, and then also pressing our legislators to pass the regulations and policies that are going to make it the default option for everyone so that they can all enjoy the benefits. Thanks again for letting me participate tonight.
Thank you, Zach. And I just wanted to put in a plug for apartment owners or apartment renters or condo owners. They're part of the mix too. So that's something that they can talk with the property owner or talk with your homeowners association about those machines in your building as well. All right. Well,
Dahlia,
I
I'm sorry, Dahlia, could I just jump in with one?
Oh, yes, please.
Here? Zach, in his presentation, talked about energy building codes and that the building sector, residential commercial building sector, is one where we're really kind of behind the 8 ball. It just came into my inbox tonight that Senator Marco Rubio has attached an amendment to a must-pass bill that will rescind and reverse the building code, the energy building codes. They're already out of date. And I put a link in the chat to the article on that. And I think some of you who are Climate Action Now users and read our newsletter, we've been doing a series on systemic action that has been outlined in Hal Harvey's The Big Fix. And one of them that we'll be talking about soon is this very one, energy building codes, which are amazingly dull and boring, but also incredibly important. And here's Rubio, trying to take us back into the pre-Anthropocene geologic area, by taking government off the hook with building codes. So we will have actions in the app on this, but get yourselves educated on this issue. And this is urgent because we got to get to our legislators right now and say, don't do this amendment. I mean, this is taking us in the wrong direction. Okay.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, great. I just noticed your chat there, Zach, that you all at Rewiring America, you're creating resources and materials specifically for renters. So that sounds very exciting. All right. Well, I'm noticing it's 13:09 and our goal was 1,200 messages. So
Yeah.
Bravo, everybody.
Well done.
And I'm going to turn it back over to you, Brett.
Yeah.
Well, okay. Thank you. I'm going to turn over to Chris here in a second, but I want to say we've recorded the session. Probably sometime tomorrow, I will send out the recording to everybody who registered for this event. You'll get it, but please send it on to other people. I mean, you've been here, you've taken the action, but you can amplify your impact if you send that recording to other people, and then they'll be able to see the QR code, scan it, and take the actions in the app. And you also, if you weren't in the app tonight, it's there, it's still there. And you can go back at your convenience to go in and contact these legislators. So, Chris, any final words?
No, just just thank you, everybody, for being here, and Dahlia for a great job moderating, and everybody for taking the actions. We really made a difference tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Good night.
Thank you, Chris, for
Good night.
making them all. Yay.
Yeah, thank you, Chris and Bill Murphy.
Thanks, y'all.